Charisma,
yes,
absolutely.
I mean, Chris Blackwell was incredibly important to the music business, not just because of what he did, but because of what he said, you know, the idea. I remember being, you know, the great thing was that Chris Blackwell was the first person to do full-page ads in the NME for artists, you know. No one had marketed a record before then. I mean, the big marketing campaign for the Floyd was, if you were lucky, you got a quarter page in the Melody Maker and Sounds, you know. I think NME was too expensive. I mean, you know, they didn't advertise. Ireland started advertising. Chris Blackwell invented the deal in the UK whereby, you know, you were allowed to do what you liked in the studio because he, you know, you got amount of, all that was recouped from your royalties. He started recouping recording costs from royalties, which up to that date, you just went in, you got a very low royalty and they paid the costs. And the producer, who was the A&R man, who, you know, he did the whole thing. He told you what to record, and that was the tradition at that time. And Blackwell was the one who started, as it were, who got to the idea that you had to, you know, or responded to the fact that in this new world that was going down under the influence of drugs, you had to let the artists, and albums and multi-track recording, that you had to let the artists make their own records. But if you did that, the other side of it was that they better bloody pay for it, because once they got in there and had enough dough, they'd sit there for days and days and weeks and weeks.
But also,
he also owned the studio.
Yes.
And the publishing, and the agency.
But also,
and the management.
He made frequent trips to America, and he was trying to make it like the American standard, where recording costs were recoupable, but you got royalties. You know, the royalties were so low in England; they were like tuppence. I mean, they pennies, real pennies royalty, and
they were percentages.
And you know, Hugh Mendel was producing Chris Barber's. He's a guy from Decca. We were talking about, and he was producing Chris Barber's jazz band, and there were a few minutes left over at the end of a session. And one of the members of his band was Lonnie Donegan. He said, "Can I use this?" And he recorded the Rock Island Line, which was the first real skiffle record that was a hit in the UK. And Decca put it out, and he went to see Sir Edward Lewis for a royalty. He said, "You're not signed to us." He said, "You're just a band member." He said, "You got a session fee for it." And then he left and went over to Pi, and millions of records later, that's kind of what kept the Pi label, you know, in business.